Hello, everybody. Today's chat is going to be on one of my favorite topics of all time, and that is the coolest thing in the world, scaling. Scaling is cool. We say it all the time at CrossFit Linchpin because it's true. I'm a firm believer that most people should scale more frequently than they do, and most people's fitness goals would be achieved quicker and with higher levels of happiness and less potentially bodily destruction if they scaled. And so we're going to have some chats about scaling, and we'll go through just a couple classic CrossFit benchmark workouts, reasons you may want to scale, and how you might do that. And of course, there's going to be more options than I'll cover here. But anyway, this question was originated a couple weeks ago during an Ask Me Anything in the CrossFit Linchpin private track Facebook group. Somebody asked a question that basically said, is it a worthwhile goal to just simply want to be an RX'd athlete, a prescribed athlete? And just meaning, I don't really care if I knock these workouts out of the park regarding times or something, but I would just like to know that I could do a prescribed Fran, a prescribed Diane, a prescribed Murph, Cindy, Isabel, Amanda, whatever, you name it. I would just like to say, yeah, I can do that. I know the time isn't going to, raise anybody's eyebrows, but I can do that. Is that a goal? And first of all, yes, the short answer is yes. It's a fantastic, phenomenal goal. The second part of that question made me sad, really, and maybe just made me realize how many years have gone by and what people in the community around the world are exposed to these days with regards to, the competition side of CrossFit and loads being lifted and all these things. And I think as wonderful and inspirational as all of that is, it can wreak havoc with whatever that barometer is that you should have as a worthwhile accomplishment or a lofty goal. Like, your norm becomes a bit askew, if you will. And because, back when I first got into CrossFit, which was a while ago now, back in 2005, there wasn't a CrossFit Games at that point in time. And so, yeah, like the goals, the huge goals were like, wow, could you imagine being able to do Diane? Like, wow, 45 deadlifts at 225 pounds and 45 handstand push-ups, like that's crazy. And then other things like 30 ring muscle-ups for time. That was basically science fiction. The people who could do 30 ring muscle-ups for time didn't care how long it took them. They were basically real-life ninjas as far as we were concerned. Just mind-boggling capacity. Like, wow, can't wait to get my first ring muscle-up. That person can do 30 of them. That's insane. Fill in the blank. Something like Isabel was just insane. You want me to take a 135-pound barbell and through this magical Olympic lifting technique just get it over my head somehow? What do you think? I'm a magician? How's that possible? It's so heavy. And these days, you're used to seeing, well, somebody can do Isabel in, under 90 seconds. So I guess that's normal, right? I guess if I should have like a 90-second Isabel, right? And when I hop up there to do my 30 ring muscle-ups for time, well, I'm expected to do at least the first 15 unbroken. If not, it's really nothing to brag about. So while it's wonderful to watch what human beings are capable of and the limits of human capacity get extended and extended and extended, it's fantastic. To the regular gym goer, I think that can be a bit toxic or a bit depressing as to now what the baseline should be that they are striving for. Okay, that's kind of the general thing. And for most people, just your classic CrossFit benchmark workouts, being able to do them as prescribed, phenomenal. An absolutely phenomenal goal, which there's a lot of variety of loading and movements and rep ranges in there that if you just got to the point where you could do them, it would take you years and it'd be a worthwhile pursuit, but you'd be a beast when you got there. It doesn't matter that we're not watching you on the competition floor somewhere, you would be a beast. So, and for most people, if you are trying to accomplish that goal, that I hope becomes a cool goal again. Just being able to do something prescribed. Don't care what your time is, just can you do it prescribed? Fantastic. And if not, no worries. You're on the pursuit, you're gaining capacity, you're on the road. But for most people that are trying to become or to be capable enough to do something prescribed, a fantastic way to achieve that goal is going to be through intelligent, appropriate scaling, right? And of course, all of this is intertwined, steeped in that old-timey CrossFit tradition of mechanics, consistency, and intensity. There's absolutely no way you should be adding intensity to something if your mechanics are not great and if you can't do those mechanics consistently well under a bit of fatigue with some loading. These are just the foundational building blocks that ideally go without saying before I start talking about where scaling workouts, things like that. So you want to start doing some workouts prescribed, or that's your goal. Progressions, scaling, intelligent trainers, solid programming, all those things are going to be critical, as well as you should not just rely on your trainers for these things. I'm a big fan of building intelligent athletes, and it's why we do these conversations. Because ideally, you as an athlete should have the goal of not just improving your fitness, but improving your knowledge of all these things, your knowledge of progressions and scaling and, solid programming, etc., and learn about your own limits, your strengths, your struggles, all that stuff. And that will do nothing but help accelerate your progress forward. So, different types of scaling will get you there. And of course, we want to preserve the stimulus of what it is that we don't have quite yet the capacity to do and we're working on. Reasons to scale could be, but are not limited to. So we could start with, is your technique solid, but is the loading just too much? Okay, so let's take something like Diane. Maybe your deadlift technique is solid. Your mechanics, consistency, and intensity, deadlift, check, good to go. 225 for a 21-15-9 rep scheme, even though your deadlift technique is solid with a PVC pipe, an empty barbell, a little bit lighter loading, you're not going to knock out 45 reps with 225. You're just not there yet, even though your technique's good. No worries. You can keep that 21-15-9 rep scheme, bump that loading down to 205, 185, 155, whatever happens to be appropriately challenging for where you are at that time. You don't want it to be easy, right? I mean, the body is a system that you stress the system. You appropriately stress the system, and then you let it recover, and it recovers stronger and better. So if you don't ever stress the system, you're not going to get that adaptation and move forward. Now, that's why I use the term appropriately challenging. Inappropriately challenging would be too much loading, too heavy of a rep scheme, technique degrades, now you're going down a bad path. But there's that sweet spot for each athlete, which is why I can't say there's just one way to scale this, right? Because you might be a 205-pound person and the barbell works great. Somebody else, appropriately scaled, might be 185 or 155. But wherever your window is, that's where you want to live. That's where you want to play and experiment. That's where that adaptation and growth is going to come from. So maybe you don't have to scale just the loading. Maybe 225 is pretty good for you, okay? But not quite good enough for a 21-15-9. Who cares? There are no rules here. Again, if you understand and start to improve your baseline knowledge of scaling and how these things work, maybe you can do your Diane is, instead of 21-15-9, you're going to keep the 225 deadlift, but it's going to be 15 reps in the first round, 12 reps in the second round, 6 reps in the final round. And that is great for you, and it's a heck of a workout. It's within your limits, and it's building the strength you need with the loading you need for that particular movement. Same with the handstand push-ups. Let's say, the question becomes, can you safely do some handstand push-ups with proper technique, but maybe just not 45 reps yet? Same deal, same recipe. you can go ahead and scale the numbers. Or if, now of course, not to burst anyone's bubble, but you would also want to have strict handstand push-ups before you start kipping handstand push-ups in workouts. But getting back to what I was just saying again, you can safely do the handstand push-ups with proper technique, but maybe 45 reps is just, 21:15.9 is just too much. That first set of 21 will take you 15 minutes because you're going to do 3, shake out, walk around for a bit, 3, shake out, walk around for another minute. Again, I shouldn't say there are no rules, but I like saying that phrase. There are no rules. There are some rules, but there are no rules. So here's something else you could do. If maybe the 21:59, those chunks of work are just too big, who's to say that your Diane couldn't look like 9 rounds for time of 5 deadlifts and 5 handstand push-ups? Okay, well now you're still getting in the same overall reps at the end of the day that you would in a 21:15.9, but since you're breaking it up into 9 rounds of 5 and 5, it's much smaller, much more manageable chunks of work, and that's probably going to keep a tremendous amount more athletes moving nicely through the entire workout. So that's a great way to do it as well. Here's something else which could potentially blow CrossFitters' minds every now and then. You could apply it to any of the things that I just said. Don't run the clock. Just don't run the clock. Maybe you could do it as the 21:59, the 15:12.6, or the 9 rounds of 5 and 5. All of those could be done. Just shut the clock off. Make it a strength day. Make it a technique day. Strength day at a high heart rate, and you're good to go. You're appropriately challenging your body. You've scaled or modified the workout in a way that makes sense for you, and you're good to go. And that runs into, you can scale the loading, you can scale the repetitions, you could modify the movement if need be, but you can also modify or modulate the level of intensity. I think some people forget that every now and then. What degree you depress the accelerator is up to you, and that is a huge factor. Give yourself enough time to recover, and you might be able to get some more handstand push-ups. Give yourself enough time to recover between sets, and you absolutely should be able to keep your midline in the proper form and deadlift that loading again. And getting back to the whole strict handstand push-ups before kipping, tons of ways to get there as well through scaling modifications and progressions, right? From static holds to controlled negatives to doing planks and piked handstand push-ups off of a box to doing shoulder press and everything in between. So you've got a lot of ways to get there. And that was just Diane. That was one of the classics, when I first get into CrossFit, that seems so intimidating to everybody, not just for the deadlift, but for the handstand push-ups. Another one that absolutely just sent waves of terror down everybody was Isabel. The thought of doing 30 snatches with 135 pounds, or 95 pounds for the women, seemed absolutely insane. And we would just play the same game with Isabel, right? So we asked the question, all right, you want to do Isabel. Is your technique solid? If the answer is yes, my technique's solid, it's just a bit heavy, well, great. Then we have options. If your technique's solid, well, let's just reduce the loading. If your technique's solid, maybe you can snatch 135, but we're either going to reduce the reps, doesn't have to be 30, maybe it could be 20, maybe it could be 15, or if your technique is solid and 30 reps is okay, then we're just going to remove the intensity piece. And you're going to do, let's say it's a power snatch, Isabel. 1 power snatch on the minute, every minute for 30 minutes. Is that a heavy day or is that Isabel? Why can't it be a bit of both, depending upon where that athlete is in their progression of advancement? Now, if we ask that, is your technique solid question, and the answer comes back no, well, then we're going to go down this is like a choose your own adventure book. Then we go down a different path. Okay, technique is not solid. We need to do technique practice. We're not worried about crushing Isabel. We're worried about technique practice with a loading that is appropriately challenging, be that a PVC pipe, an empty barbell, 50% loading, whatever it happens to be. It is also possible, when working on your technique, to simplify the movement a bit. Okay, maybe the power snatches very challenging for you, let's make it into a hang power snatch. And then we're removing that pull off of the ground a little bit, just working on some bar paths, some hip opening, some strength in an overhead position, and then we will build it back down to the floor after we really dial in that hang power snatch. Nothing wrong with that either. We'll embrace things such as the Bergner warm-up. We'll do that 2 to 3 times a week as part of our warm-up. Even if there's not a barbell in the workout, doesn't matter. The Bergner warm-up is just a fantastic head-to-toe warm-up regardless of what you're doing. And if you are patient with that, it will pay off. It will absolutely improve your barbell snatch. Now let's say, and this is the goal that myself and some of my other friends had, not just Isabel, squat snatch Isabel. That's the road that we want to go down. Okay, it's just the same game. Again, why I like trying to ideally improve an athlete's knowledge and understanding of the CrossFit methodology, basic programming concepts, scaling is once you understand the why and the how that we do things, it doesn't matter what the workout is. It doesn't matter what the loading or the movement or whatever it is. You can dissect it and break it down and make it manageable for whatever you are. So same deal. Squat snatch Isabel. Great. Is the technique solid? The answer is yes. Okay, well, we're going to reduce the loading, or we're going to reduce the intensity, or we're going to reduce the reps as long as the technique's solid. Is the technique not solid? Same game. Technique practice, or potentially a simplification of the movement that still gets us going towards where we want to be. Maybe that squat snatch becomes power snatch plus an overhead squat. Maybe it becomes a hang power snatch plus an overhead squat. Maybe it becomes a hang squat snatch. And again, just options and patience win the day. And the patience part is probably very challenging for CrossFitters, which is why we do everything for time. All right, the final one that I'll talk about, which was the other just such a huge one when I first got into CrossFit that just seemed insurmountable, 30 ring muscle-ups for time. If we're dissecting what's needed for this, well, we need some strength and we need some technique, right? We gotta have both, or we're not gonna have success with 30 ring muscle-ups for time. We need pull-up strength, and not just pull-up strength, but your friend and mine, strict pull-up strength. The more, the merrier. We need ring dip strength. Strict, by the way. The more, the merrier. If we have just fantastic capacity with strict pull-ups, fantastic capacity with strict ring dips, then that magic in the middle, that wizard pepper that's going to turn those pull-ups and dips into ring muscle-ups is your friend and mine technique. And that technique can be practiced in a large variety of ways. And now, not to go down a rabbit hole, but it's almost like all this stuff makes sense. In classic CrossFit methodology, CrossFit defines strength as the productive application of force. And the ring muscle-up is a beautiful example of that. So you might be able to exert a particular amount of force with your pull-ups, with your ring dips. And that amount of force that you're exerting might be ample to do a ring muscle-up, but you might still not have a ring muscle-up. But you don't need more force. You need to apply that force in a manner which is productive to achieve your goal, and your goal being the ring muscle-up. And they say strength is the productive application of force, and that productive application of force is technique dependent. So we've got to have a strength component, we've got to have a technique component. And you can work on both at the same time. If you don't have the pull-ups, you've got everything from seated pull-ups to negatives to bands to ring rows to bent over rows to just working on your grip strength and being able to hold that false grip is a big deal. Beyond the Whiteboard has a fantastic specialty program. They've got a bunch of specialty programs, but to get your first strict pull-up, they've got one to get your first strict ring dip, they've got one to get your first muscle-up. So there are some great progressions in there as well. If you don't have the dips, push-ups, box dips, bench dips, bar dips, all sorts of pressing, static holds at both the top and bottom position of the ring dips, bands, etc., etc. It goes on and on. And you want to get those strict movements down before you kip. And then little by little, doesn't have to just be for time, right? You can go ahead and take as much time as you need. You can do them from a seated position on the ground with your feet kicked out in front of you and do low ring muscle-ups that way. They're absolutely fantastic. If you have the patience to do low ring muscle-ups on a regular basis, feet on the floor, eventually feet on a box, using only the amount of leg necessary to assist you in doing the ring muscle-up with proper technique, when you start to develop that capacity at the low ring muscle-up, you are developing a strict, no kip ring muscle-up, and that will pay off on the high rings. So those are the big three that I wanted to talk about. Diane, Isabel, and the 30 ring muscle-ups. That the goal of becoming an athlete that can do classic CrossFit benchmark workouts prescribed is a fantastic goal, and it should be cherished. And it's not an easy goal. I think that's also missed these days. I don't think it gets the respect that it deserves. It is a lofty goal for plenty of people, a lofty goal, and it should be given that respect that it deserves. And most people will be able to achieve that goal through uncomplicated, intelligent scaling, understanding of why we do what we do and how we do it. But then here's the critical factor: paired with patience. It's so tough to do. Some of these things, they don't occur in days or weeks. They occur in months of time. And sometimes I'm not talking 2 months, many months, but they will happen. Happen to every single human being that I started doing CrossFit with has achieved all of these things by just doing exactly what I said and just being patient. That's just how we learn from reading the CrossFit Journal, and it works, and it works just as well today. So again, it's great to see things called RX Plus. It's great to see things happening at the games or sanctioned events. It's great to see competition level stuff. It's fantastic. I love watching that stuff. It's great, and you probably do as well. But don't let it cloud your judgment or your metric as to what is an appropriate goal for most people in your gym. That's kind of what I would say right there. Yeah, and the same stuff works on heavy days, by the way. I know there's such a rush. There's just such a rush to lift massive weight. But just being consistent, few things trump consistency. Intensity, appropriate scaling, modulating that intensity, cherishing your rest days, respecting the heavy days. We had somebody else that just posted this in the Facebook group. He's been with us for a couple of years, and we just recently did a 5x5 back squat. And we've done that several times, but he's been with us for 2 years, and he said 2 years ago his 5x5 back squat was 205 pounds, was the most he could get for a set of 5 during that 5x5. 2 years has gone by, just intelligently scaling, appropriately challenging yourself, respecting the heavy days, not lifting heavy every day, not cramming it in before a Metcon, nothing like that, just doing the old school stuff that works. And 2 years later, it's now gone from 205 pounds for that 5x5 to 305 pounds. So the back squat 5 rep, not just a single, but a 5 rep has gone up 100 pounds. I think that's pretty spectacular. But the patience, the runway to do it in a nice progressive fashion was 2 years. But you get there. But you just, again, consistency, and understanding of the methodology, and understanding of the why, and understanding of appropriately scaling, and applying those factors to your life will yield some fantastic results. You just got to hang in there. So that's it. Scaling is cool. I hope that helps. Have a wonderful day, and we will talk later.